I figured since I haven't made an in-depth video of this 316 yet, I make a video of me putting it to work. And I'll talk to you guys a little bit about it. This will be like a working update video. This is a pain in the butt with only two hands, just saying. So, I've been meaning to make an update video on this for a while, but I just, between school and now I'm working for the Navy Yard, I'm working an internship 5 days a week, which is a very busy haul too, and I barely even had time to get all my lawns mowed, so I'm trying to do them at night and on the weekends. But this one's different. This is a pretty damn big job. This is my friend's house. She lives about 15 minutes from me in the next town over. And as you can see, she's got a pretty big field here. It's probably about 3.5 acres total. And they used to hire a friend of theirs with a compact tractor with a bush hog to get this kind of work done, because as you can see, it's a field and it's a pain in the ass to get it all done. And it got too expensive for them, after a while. So they bought a $300 Craftsman with a little Kohler Command and a 38-inch deck, and now it won't start on them. And it's a horrible tractor for doing this kind of work anyway. And they called the first person they know to do lawn care work. They called me up. I'm good friends with them anyway, so they called me up and asked me to take care of this lawn for them. They don't have a whole lot of money anyway, so I figured I do it cheaper than most landscapers anyway. So I came down and checked it out last night, and I actually used my uncle's pickup, the F350 dually with the little trailer behind it, and about 2 hours ago I brought it down, unloaded it and started mowing. So got a pretty big job to do. They need this lawn done by tomorrow night. I think they're having a party or something like that. Better late than never. But now I'm rushing to get this done. So I'll probably be here until about 10 o'clock tonight or so, maybe even later. Since I bought this tractor, I've been using it at night so much. Just by luck. I've had a lot of lawns to do, and I just haven't had time, so I finish them up at night on the weekends. So this isn't really anything new to me. I'm just kind of working this thing now. And a John Deere 316, or an old John Deere nonetheless, is a much better machine to use than a piece of Craftsman. Yeah, it's got a flat tire. It won't even start now. It just cranks and backfires when you try to start it. I looked at it for a few minutes. It's a little Kohler Command single cylinder, 15 horsepower. I had a 13 horse on that LT133 that I had. And they're interesting little motors. When they work good. Again, this is a pain in the butt with only one hand to steer and to drive. But my friend and her family are not home right now. They went out to eat, so I'm here alone. And the past 2 weeks, South Jersey's been hammered by severe thunderstorms and actually a couple minor tornadoes too. I mean, those are some big oak trees that got destroyed in the last storm. There's a barn under that tree somewhere, but it's gone now. So just to give you an idea, I know you guys out in the Midwest are probably laughing at us, but we've never had a tornado that severe. It was probably like an F2 or so. I mean, there were a couple houses in this very area that got destroyed, especially under the trees. And as you can see, as soon as I got started, I hit a soft spot. That's from where that tree fell down right there. Not a good not a good place to get stuck, and there was no one home. So I had to call my uncle, God bless him, came down with his 4x4 F-150 and towed me out. So that was easy. It's just going to be a nice long video. I don't know if you guys like the fact that I make half-hour long videos, but I think you guys will like this one. I just, between work and school ending and all kinds of other crap, I haven't had time to, clean this tractor off and make a good video with it, of me working with it. So I figured, why not make a video doing what it does best, doing what you guys like seeing these things do. Some pretty high grass to mow. My other uncle, the landscaper with the 318, he mows a nursery with his, and the grass gets about this high on a weekly basis. So that tractor's mowed grass this high every week of its life, or every summer anyway, since 1986. And that's part of the reason why I wanted to buy one of these, because these things can really take a beating. Very tough machines. I think if a 318 could do it, a 316 with the same motor could also do it. And the only thing that caused me trouble, like I said before, is that friggin' mud hole. So I learned my lesson after getting the 210 stuck many times and making ruts. Those days are over. And this 316 is in such nice shape, I don't want to ruin it by scratching up the paint and getting it all muddy and, having the mud dry and everything. So sorry. The bugs are pretty bad if you can't tell. Watch this. Don't try that at home. It's not the best for your blades, but I just got a new set of blades and sharpened the crap out of them. So if I'm going to talk about this tractor, I might as well do it now while you guys are while there's still daylight. So I don't know how many of you guys saw the last video I uploaded of me driving this tractor home the very day I got it, but it's a 1987 John Deere 316, owned and powered obviously. And as many of you guys know, for the past couple of years I was looking for a 300 series tractor, specifically a 318 or something along those lines, something with an Onan engine. Like I just said, I have fond memories riding on my uncle's 318 when I was little, and I said, that's such a tough machine. I mean, his has probably got about 5,000 hours on it now, or close to that, and it still goes every week. I said, I gotta get something that reliable, because as we all know, my LA 150 is nothing but trouble. And I also wanted something with a shaft-driven transmission, because the drive belt system on the 210 was getting me so pissed off. I kind of lost faith in the drive belt system. But on those old tractors, the John Deere drive belt systems weren't too bad with the variator and everything. But I figured if I'm going to be doing heavy duty work with this, I need a shaft drive. They're more reliable. And after the ridiculous winter we had, with the 210, plowing driveways and doing stuff like that, on and off the clutch, shifting gears, going forward and reverse, after a while, it starts to stretch the belt. So I'd be out, a mile down the road plowing someone's driveway, and the drive belt would pop off when I let the clutch out. And for some reason, that 12-horse motor, that little Kohler K301 that I put in it, has such a bad battery draw, and I have no idea why. I'm guessing it's the stator. Just my luck, I spent all that money on a nice rebuilt motor, and the stator's shot. So the battery don't hold a charge. So I would shut it off to put the drive belt back on the pulley, and I wouldn't be able to start it up again because the battery just dies while it's running. I couldn't put up with it. I got so fed up with that thing. That was the first real garden tractor I owned, and after all the money and time and effort I put into it, I can't just get rid of it. So after collaborating with my dad a little bit, I fixed up the LA 150 and put it on Craigslist. On Craigslist it didn't sell, so I put it up on eBay. And then after about a month, the guy picked it up out of near Ocean City, New Jersey. He said he'd be using it for a campground, which is really a death sentence for it, because those things are only built to mow like an acre or so. Yeah, I mean, that's a death sentence for a little 100 series tractor like that. But he had a little 102, which is the gear drive version. It's a little older, but it's the same, you know, it's a 100 series. It's the same chassis and everything. So he knew how to maintain them and everything, you know, to replace the bearings and all that crap, all the cheap stuff. So I knew he would at least take care of it and make it go as long as he could. Long story short, he came to my house, picked it up. I got $1,400 for it, and in the midst of that transaction, I was looking on Craigslist and eBay for some, you know, 300 series. I didn't really know what I wanted. I mean, I was looking for a 318 or a 316 with the Odin motor, but in my area they were expensive, and the 300 series with the Kohler engines were a lot more common. So I figured maybe I could get a 300 or something like that. And then I was looking one day, and in South Pennsylvania, actually very close to the Maryland border, this tractor popped up for sale. And the description was kind of vague, but the pictures were very good. There were only a couple pictures. There were maybe 4 or 5 pictures. But it looked to be in great shape. And just to be sure of everything, I called the guy up who was selling it. Turns out he was a farmer, a hobby farmer. Both times I called him, he was out on his tractor planting corn or soybeans. So I said, okay, this guy has to know what he's talking about. And he said it has over $2,500 worth of new parts in it. And he restored it just as a restoration project. Nothing, you know, nothing crazy. And he said mechanically it was in good shape. And he took good care of it. So I had to trust him on that. And he was a farmer anyway, too. So after calling him a few times, my grandfather and I went down, made the deal. He started out asking $2,500 for it, but for whatever reason, it didn't sell for about 2 months. And when I first came across the listing, he wanted $1,500 for it, or $1,600, something like that. I said, what's the lowest you want to go? He said $1,400, and that's exactly what I sold the LA 150 for. So I made a profit compared to when I first bought the LA 150 8 years ago, or 7 years ago. I sold it for more than I bought it for, almost new. But I spent that money on a good machine. And this tractor was very nicely restored. But I'll get to that in a second. So my grandfather and I went down one day. It was about an hour and a half drive. I went down with my new truck, which I actually have to make a video on. It's just a quick rundown. It's a 2004 F-150 with a long bed and extended cab. I'll have a video on that at some point, but that's just a little sneak peek so you guys know what I'm getting into. So we went down with that truck. Very first heavy load that I hauled with it. Getting a little hot there. Very first heavy load that I hauled with it. Went down to the guy's place and he showed us his shop on this little farm there. Walked in and he had a beautifully restored 318, 330 diesel and a 332 diesel. I said, oh, this guy knows his stuff. He said he's a fan of the diesels, not so much the gassers. He just wanted the 316 as a restoration project. He wanted to get off his hands. I said, what the hell, I'll take it off your hands for you. So after some negotiating and talking a little bit, I let it run for a little bit. Ran very good, mowed good. Tractor looked brand new. It was completely flawless. The only problem it had was a transmission input seal for the drive shaft. When the drive shaft goes into the transmission pump, it was leaking. I said, oh, that can't be too hard to fix. I know the seals are easy to fix. So I expected that. I figured, you know, it probably wasn't 100% restored because he'd be asking a lot more for it. So I knew it was going to need some parts. But I started it up, let it run, And as soon as it warmed up and I revved it up, it over-revved, which is a very common problem with these P-Series Zonits put in these couple model years. The governor uses basically a giant ball bearing. It's called a fly ball spacer. It's a plastic, well, usually it was metal, but 1987 they switched to plastic. It's a plastic gear. It gets glued onto the camshaft and controls the opening and closing of the governor, and controls how much fuel goes into the governor. And over time, the plastic gear wears down on the camshaft and begins to spin by itself, so it basically controls the governor by itself. Oops. Did not see that there. So yeah, so once it warms up and the gear starts to spin by itself, and it can cause it to over-rev, especially when it gets hot and when the motor works hard. It just dumps too much fuel down into the cylinder, and I'll show you. You can hear it's running about 4,000 RPMs there, which is really hot, especially with these Onan air-cooled engines. With the way these are set up, these need as much cooling as possible, so running these hot is not good. And unfortunately, some people don't like the Onans because of that problem. They don't take care of them, they overheat, and sometimes they throw the valve seats. But that's why when this thing over-revs and it starts to run hot, I just throttle it down. I'm running just about wide open right now, but after a while, when it starts working again, it'll over-rev. So I keep it at about 3/4 throttle, because there usually won't do anything. Gas wide open throttle is the best spot to mow with these, especially since they need the most cooling. But in this case, I have to rev it down a little bit so it doesn't overheat. But anyway, I got this tractor home, made that one video of me driving it home, and then it took me a while to figure out how to hook up the mower deck because it's a horizontal shaft engine. And the PTO goes out the front and it uses a mule drive to drive the belt. So the mule drive was a little bit of a challenge to figure out. So it took me a while to figure out how to set that up. But once I got it figured out, I figured out how to set the mower deck tension. The one problem I had though was there's a couple little guards and stuff welded onto the mule drive, and it directs the belt. And if you don't put the belt inside those little guards, it can chew the belt right off. And unfortunately, that's what happened. The belt was in good shape too, so I had to get a new belt for it, which kind of sucked. Oops. So yeah, I did have to get a new belt for it, and that kind of sucked. But it was actually cheaper to get a belt for this thing than it was to get a belt than it normally is to get a belt for the 210. So that was good. So my uncle showed me how to mount that up. I mean, he's got a 318. He's owned it since it was new, so he knows everything there is to these. So I got that figured out, got the tension set, and haven't had a problem since then. Sometimes I just have to be careful putting the belt on the right way when I go around those. When I route it around the pulley, so I don't get chewed up. Cut across here. This tractor's been very tough. When I bought it, it had 1,093 hours on the meter, and now it has, let's see. There's that Onan, purrs like a kitten. 1,179. So that just goes to show you how much I've used this thing in the past 2 months. This thing's going to get a lot of use, but luckily this was made back in the day when these tractors could handle it. So it just goes to show you how much I use this thing. But I have had a couple problems with it, like I said, getting the belt tension set. And I actually noticed this when I first got the tractor. The right front tire, these have tire tubes in them. They use the old style Goodyear tires, the 2-ply tires. They put a tire tube in them, and the tire tube had a hole in it, or got an air bubble, I mean, and it started to blow up, and the tire became kind of egg-shaped. I said, oh great, that's going to blow. And about 2 or 3 days after I got the tractor home, the tire exploded. So I just went down to Tractor Supply. I got a cheap little $35 Chinese 2-ply tire. It looks like the Carlisle Multi-Tracks though, which are those real heavy-duty industrial tires. I figured it looks alright, but maybe someday I'll get rib tires for it or something like that. But steering isn't much of a problem for me. It has a Ross steering box with a very big pivot arm. To compensate for the lack of power steering, like the 318 and the 322 and all those models had. They put a really nice and easy steering system on it, and it is very easy to steer. I can steer with one finger. And just for stability, I added the spinner knob that I had on the 210. So usually my left hand stays on the knob, my right hand stays on the hydro knob. Just makes it easier. As you can see, the steering has a little bit of slop in it. I'm not too worried about that though. I've never worked on a steering box, but it steers alright, especially when it's greased. I just greased it today and sharpened the blades last night because I knew it was going to be in for a lot of work. But it steers great. Like I said, it does have a little slop. I had to take the steering wheel off and realign it with the spoke facing up. It wasn't centered the right way, so I fixed that. And it seems to be fine. And I've had a couple other things go wrong with it. Like I said, the tire. I had to get some new oil for it. And the problem is, it leaks oil out of that transmission seal, like I said. But to fix that, you have to take the rear end out and pull the drive shaft off. And I don't have the time or the desire to do that. It's just a slow leak. I just keep adding the low viscosity high guard oil to it, because that's the only stuff John Deere recommends you to put in. Only that stuff. Those of you guys that have these hydrostatic models, you only want to run low viscosity high guard. ATF is no good. Save you a lot of headaches, and you get more power out of the transmission like this anyway. You can hear how the motor over revs when I hit a high spot, or I come out of a high spot and the motor picks back up. Someday I'll get to fixing that. I'll take the motor out. My friend Jimmy, John Deere 318 guy, had the same problem with his 318. Same year, same motor, and he fixed it himself with a new flyball spacer Deere, a metal one, not a crappy plastic one. So at some point I'll get around to replacing that with Jimmy's help. It won't be too hard. I haven't had this motor out. I would hope I don't have to pull it out for anything, since it's, it's in good original shape. And it's coming up on 1,200 hours, which is, it's starting to get up there, but this tractor was definitely baby. Very well taken care of. Besides the flyball spacer issue, it runs flawlessly. Every once in a while I have to take it apart to clean all the crap out of the cooling fins and the flywheel and stuff. But a lot of people forget to do that, and that's why these things overheat. They get so much grass clogged up in them. And that's the only major problem they had with these when they designed them, is the cooling. Because these, especially these horizontal shaft twin cylinder motors, they need as much air cooling as they can get. And the flywheel faces the back because it's shaft driven. So they added screens there on both side panels. And there's a belly screen underneath too. For those of you guys that are familiar with these things, there's a big belly screen underneath. Keeps shit from getting, sucked up into the drive shaft and everything. And it keeps most stuff out of the flywheel fins too. But every once in a while, you still have to take them apart and clean them off. So that's not a big deal. You have to do that with any tractor. It's just, with these, it's most important because, like I said, these things need as much cold air as they can get. So, I've been here about 2.5 hours now. Wasted about 45 minutes because I was stuck, and unfortunately no one's home right now, so I had to call my uncle down with his 4x4 F-150, and he pulled me out. I kind of, after a long chain of events, I was going to bring my truck down just so I could leave. I have to get picked up though. But if I had my truck down here, I'd be able to pull it out without a problem. My truck's only 2-wheel drive though, but I know there's a lot of you Chevy and Dodge guys out there But I'll have a video of my Ford up on YouTube at some point soon. Yeah, I'm excited about it. But that's another video. I think this is more important since you guys have been waiting to see a video of this a lot more. So, it's getting dark now. I could put the flashlight on, but I'm actually going slower than I should be, and I need both hands to do this, so I'm going to let you guys go in a second. But I just thought I'd give you a good view of the 316. I'll have more videos of this coming up in the future, but it's been a good tractor though. Just as reliable as I made it out to be.